In this video, I'm identifying 10 of my favorite wines from Bordeaux for $50 or less. And this time they are not all red wines. So let's get started. The first top Bordeaux for $50 or less comes from Cos de Stournel. Cos de Stournel is a second growth in the 1855 classification of Bordeaux. It's located in Saint-Estèphe on Bordeaux's left bank. The top wines for Cos de Stournel have been extremely impressive lately, and it's on a bit of a hot streak, but their second wine is outstanding in its own right. The second wine is called Pagod de Cos and sells for about $50. This is certainly a very highly acclaimed wine, particularly in the outstanding 2019 vintage. This 2019 Pagod de Cos is a blend that consists of 55% Cabernet Sauvignon, 36% Merlot, 5% Cabernet Franc, and 4% Petit Verdot. It's a seamless wine with fine-grained tannins and a very impressive finish. You can start enjoying this one now as it's made in a more approachable style, but yet it will certainly age for up to a decade with no problem at all. The next top Bordeaux for $50 or less comes from Bordeaux's right bank, specifically Chateau Bellevue from Saint-Emilion. This producer is known for having exceptional terroir. In fact, the ancient Romans discovered this site centuries ago and were making wine on it way back then. In 2007, Chateau Angelus acquired a huge ownership stake in this property. Chateau Angelus is located almost directly adjacent to Chateau Bellevue, and since the time of this big investment, there's been a substantial overhaul of the vineyards, the winemaking equipment, and the wine cellars. These investments have paid off handsomely, as now they're making some of the best wines that they've ever produced. Chateau Bellevue was certified organic in 2009. The vines average an impressive 40 years of age. This is one of the few producers that makes a wine from 100% Merlot, so there's no Cabernet Franc in this wine. 2020 is widely considered to be one of the top vintages this producer has ever made, so it's definitely a wine that's well worth considering, especially at the price point of $48 for the futures. The next top wine for $50 or less comes from Margaux, which is on Bordeaux's left bank. As such, this wine is Cabernet Sauvignon dominant, with about 2/3 Cabernet Sauvignon and 1/3 Merlot. Better still, this wine comes from a producer that's a third classified growth in the 1855 classification of Bordeaux, and it's not their second wine, it's actually their top wine. This wine has actually been getting some consideration as wine of the vintage for 2020. So it's certainly an incredible opportunity to be able to get a wine of this quality for $50 or less. Specifically, I'm talking about the Cantenac Brown from the impressive 2020 vintage. This wine I found on Futures for $49.97. It normally sells for much more than that. Certainly it will sell for more than that once it's actually released. So it's definitely worth stocking up on these Futures. While I normally recommend only buying about 3 to 6 bottles of a particular wine, this is such an outstanding deal that I definitely give consideration to buying a full case or so. I found the next Bordeaux for $50 or less, selling for $45.99 for the 2019 vintage. This wine comes from Graves, and it comes from a producer named Malartic-Lagraviere. Malartic-Lagraviere was acquired in the 1990s. The new owners at that time poured more than 20 million euros into updating the estate, the cellar, the winemaking equipment, and the vineyards. They also expanded the vineyards from 19 to 53 hectares. In the winery, they started using gravity flow techniques, which added more elegance to the wines. In the vineyards, they implemented organic principles. And at harvest, they also utilized a more strict selection, and so only the best fruit makes it into the top wine. These initiatives have all paid off handsomely, as the top wine for the 2019 vintage received widespread critical acclaim from numerous critics. This wine is a blend of 56% Cabernet Sauvignon, 41% Merlot, and 3% Cabernet Franc. It aged for 18 months in 65% New French oak. It's an extremely impressive, well-balanced wine. It's one that you can enjoy in the next couple years, but will certainly age very well up to 20 years. If you can find the 2017 or 2018 vintages on the shelves, I also recommend giving those a try. Certainly an impressive producer and one to keep an eye on going forward. The next top Bordeaux for $50 or less is a white wine. I'm talking about the Chateau Carbonnieux Bordeaux Blanc, which comes from Pessac-Léognan. I found the 2018 vintage on sale for only $37. This is certainly an outstanding producer and one that I recommend to anyone who's interested in trying Bordeaux Blanc. Carbonnieux is located in a very nice neighborhood as it's extremely close to Smith-Lafitte, which also makes an exceptional white wine, albeit one that's much more pricey than this one. Carbonnieux has 92 hectares of vineyards, which are divided evenly between their red wine and their white wine production. Carbonnieux also makes an excellent red wine and one that's a compelling value as well. This Bordeaux Blanc is 75% Sauvignon Blanc and 25% Semillon. It's a very impressive wine with some complexity and tremendous balance that should drink extremely well for the next 4 to 6 years. The next top Bordeaux for $50 or less comes from Bordeaux's left bank. This wine comes from Pauillac and from a producer that's a 5th growth in the 1855 classification of Bordeaux. I'm talking about the 2019 Haut Age Libéral. The 2019 vintage is widely regarded as the best wine ever produced by this estate. This wine has received widespread critical acclaim. 2019 was also the first vintage that this producer was certified organic and biodynamic. The vines average an impressive 35 years of age. This wine is 80% Cabernet Sauvignon and 20% Merlot. This wine aged in 40% New French Oak for 14 to 18 months, and 20% of the wine aged in amphora. This wine has plenty of structure, so it's definitely a candidate for the cellar. I would recommend giving it at least another 6 to 10 years of bottle age before digging in, but after that it should cruise for another 10 to 20 years. This is definitely a very high quality wine and one worth considering, especially if you have a little bit of patience. If you're interested in wine recommendations, wine collecting strategies, and learning more about wine, please do subscribe to my channel. I've been collecting wine for more than 15 years and also have a level 4 diploma from the WSET. So I have both formal certification as well as substantial practical knowledge from the School of Hard Knocks. The next top Bordeaux for $50 or less also comes from a 5th growth in the 1855 classification that is on Bordeaux's left bank, but this producer is from Margaux. This is a historic producer that dates all the way back to 1622, but this producer has embraced modern technology. And in fact, in 2016, they actually invited all their Facebook friends to participate in the harvest. This producer has been under new ownership and quality improved dramatically beginning with the 2015 vintage. But today I'm talking about the 2019 Chateau Dauzac. Chateau Dauzac has been firing on all cylinders for the past few years, but this 2019 vintage is widely regarded as being potentially the best wine ever produced by this estate. Certainly this wine has received widespread critical acclaim and very, very impressive scores, especially for a wine that costs less than $50. This wine is a blend of 73% Cabernet Sauvignon and 23% Merlot. It aged in 100% French oak, 2/3 of which was new. This is a very vibrant and expressive wine. I know many people have been asking me for wines that are actually ready to drink, and you'll be pleased to note that this one is one that will show well early. So you can certainly feel free to dig in right after you receive it, but it will certainly age for up to 2 decades as well. So this one will give you lots of flexibility, and I found it on sale for only $44.99. So certainly an excellent wine that's well worth considering. The next top Bordeaux for $50 or less comes from Saint-Julien producer Croix de Beaucaillou, which is a 2nd growth in the 1855 classification of Bordeaux. This producer has been on a very, very hot streak in making incredible wines lately. Their top wines is certainly one of the best wines being produced in Bordeaux, but they also have a 2nd label that's called La Croix. The 2020 vintage of La Croix is certainly highly regarded and well received by critics, and is widely considered to be one of the best vintages that they've ever produced of the La Croix. This wine sells for $49.97 for futures. It will undoubtedly sell for much more than that once it's released. This wine has been produced since 1995. It used to be a 2nd wine with declassified fruit from the top wine, but since 2005 or so, they've used a separate specific vineyard for this wine, and so all the fruit from that vineyard goes into this wine. As such, it's considered to be a 2nd label and not a 2nd wine. This wine is widely regarded to be classed growth quality, but due to the high percentage of Merlot, it's an approachable wine that's ready to enjoy even when it's young. Specifically, there's 53% Cabernet Sauvignon, 44% Merlot, and 3% Petit Verdot. Interestingly, the impressive label was made by Mick Jagger's daughter, Jade Jagger, who's a jewelry designer in London. This wine aged for 12 months in French oak, 2/3 of which was new. This is a powerful wine. It's one that's enjoyable now, but which will improve with a few years of bottle age, and one that you could enjoy over the next 15 to 20 years. The 2018 Fleur Cardinale from Bordeaux's right bank is the next top Bordeaux for $50 or less. I found this one selling for $46.99. Fleur Cardinale is located in Saint-Emilion. Fleur Cardinale has 23.5 hectares of vines. These vines average about 30 years of age, but they do have some impressive old vine Merlot that's up to 70 years old. This producer uses organic, sustainable farming methods. This wine is a blend of 74% Merlot, 22% Cabernet Franc, and 4% Cabernet Sauvignon. This is a very highly regarded wine and one that has been well received by critics. This wine matured in 100% new French oak, and so as a result, it does have lots of structure, and it's one that will definitely benefit from some additional time in the bottle. So this wine will require a bit of patience, but it's an incredible opportunity to be able to purchase a right bank wine of this quality for less than $50. The next top wine for $50 or less comes from Sauternes. Specifically, I'm talking about the 2017 Chateau Sauternes. I found this wine selling for $49.97 for half a bottle. Sauternes is located very close to legendary producer Chateau Dauzac. This producer has 90 hectares of vines that are planted to 88% Semillon and 12% Sauvignon Blanc. This wine is capable of aging for decades, but is also very impressive on release. While it's sweet, it does have abundant acidity, so it's extremely well balanced, and it's not cloyingly sweet at all. So certainly everyone that I serve this wine to is very, very impressed with it and enjoys it very much. The other great thing about Sauternes right now is that it's out of vogue, and so prices for Sauternes are extremely reasonable in the secondary market, even for vintages with substantial age on it. If you're interested in more wine recommendations at the $50 price point, be sure to check the pinned comment below.